The big tech companies, they know about this stuff, and they're trying to fix some of those problems, but I don't think we can wait.
Milwaukee for the last 10 years has been creating 150 experiences a year to help you find your belonging. You might not come to all of our events, which I'm sure most of you don't, but you come to one or two of them a year out of these 150, 180 programs we create because you find something in that, and that's how you belong. And this event is kind of the thing that we've been talking with John about and where we go from there. But then we met Amanda, my business partner from Nuance, and then we talked to Aurora Healthcare, and everybody was all in. They're the sponsor of this event, and they're like, let's have a couple of these conversations. Let's not just do it once. Let's have more conversations about how we disconnect, how do we meet one another, not over social media, and how do we build meaningful relationships. So if I was to ask you and everyone in the audience, who are the 5 people you can trust in your life, could you name those 5? And that's where we're going. We're going to how many people can be on your social media account that might like your thing, but not might be your friend in person. And we think by having an event like this and having these critical conversations and having someone like Lincoln tonight, who probably might work 23 hours a day, something like that, all the things you're starting, how do you disconnect? How do you get offline? And how do you connect to the community, what you've created, kind of an epicenter for that. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce John Zeratsky, who is a best-selling author of Sprint and Make Time. He worked for Google Ventures. He's from a small town called Green Lake. Has anybody heard of Green Lake? Yeah, he's like a town of like 2 people, I think. Except in the summer, then it's like 30,000. But he's back in Milwaukee now. He wants to make it happen here, so I'm going to let him take over the rest of the show here.
Thank you, everybody. I'm such a dork that I brought my own timer. Make sure that we don't go over time, so I'm going to set it. What time is it? 6. Okay, so we got 45 minutes. All right. So I worked in the tech industry for about 15 years, and as Jeremy mentioned, the great promise of digital technology is that it would make us more connected to each other, connected to the things that we care about, to our communities. But that's not really happening. By any measure, people today are lonelier and more disconnected than they've ever been in the time that these things have been sort of measured. There's research showing that the more social we are online, the less social we are offline, right? So these technologies are not supporting social activity, they're replacing them. And as you're probably too well aware, social media is at the center of a lot of very serious social problems. We've got hate speech, fake news, we've got vicious political debates that are unhelpful and unproductive. The big tech companies, they know about this stuff, and they're trying to fix some of those problems, but I don't think we can wait. I don't think we can wait for the tech companies to fix these things. I think that if we want to feel more connected and we want to feel like we belong in our communities, then we need to make the change ourselves. And so that's why we're here. I don't know what the solution is to that problem, but I'm pretty sure that having a conversation is a great first step. So I'm really excited that you all chose to be here. I know that there are a million things you could be doing right now, but you decided to come and spend some time with us talking about this. Perhaps you're regretting that decision now that you're here, I don't know, but you're kind of stuck for at least the next 40 or so minutes. We're going to talk up here for about 40 minutes, and feel free to ask a question or contribute at any time. The only thing I'll ask is that if you want to contribute, just kind of put up your hand or wave or something, because I want to make sure that I can repeat what you say so that it goes on the recording. A bunch of people have asked me why we're doing this, why I'm doing this, why I care about this, and part of it is about starting that conversation that I mentioned. But I have a really simple goal for tonight's event. After you leave tonight, in the days and the weeks ahead, there's just one thing that I want you to try, one thing. And it's to use technology to support human connection, not to replace it. So the next time you get a text, you get a chat, you get even an Instagram comment from somebody that you care about, instead of just hitting like and moving on with your day, reach out to that person and say, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Do you want to come over for dinner? Are you available to meet for coffee? It's been a while since we caught up. You free to jump on the phone later tonight? That's the thing that I want you to try. I hope that tonight's conversation will spur that change in thinking for you. So with that, I'm going to introduce our featured guest, Lincoln. So Lincoln Fowler is a Milwaukee native. He graduated from Marquette High School, and then he left to attend Middlebury College in Vermont, but he came back. He and his brother Ward started a company together, and that company was not Colectivo. It was actually a speaker company called Fowler Audio, and that venture failed, unfortunately, but it led to an introduction to their business partner, Paul Miller. And the three of them founded Colectivo Coffee in 1993, and they now have 21 cafes in 3 cities, a wholesale roasting plant, and a rapidly growing bakery. Since the beginning, Colectivo has been sourcing coffees from origin and roasting every batch by hand. Because of their relationships with growers, their dedication to quality, their love of craft, Colectivo is able to create a uniquely great coffee experience. And this is just me editorializing now. I think really a great offline experience for humans overall. So please join me in welcoming Lincoln Fowler to Offline.
You are very kind for having me. Thank you.
So Lincoln, is your phone off?
My phone is at least silent.
All right, that's good. I think I left my phone on. So first I'm going to take a picture of all of you, and then I'm going to turn it off. Look alive. All right. So why did you start a coffee company?
We love coffee.
That's a good answer. It's a good reason to do something.
Oh. A fundamental question. Partly it was because we loved coffee. We actually connected with my partner Paul listening to music through our loudspeakers, but also drinking coffee. Back then, we were working a ton of hours at this unsuccessful loudspeaker company. And when a company is unsuccessful, it obviously doesn't generate money, it consumes it. So since I can't live on the non-money that's coming out of this failing company, I'm working extra hours behind a bar. I was a terrible bartender. But if you add all that up, that means you don't have a whole lot of time for sleep. And entrepreneurism it's a young person's game. I could not do what I did then today, but even then I was a little sleepy. And the coffee was a critical component and a very utilitarian one. But that's how the three of us got together, and it was a not just a passion for coffee, and clearly that's in the center of things, but we really, I think for those of you that are familiar with the cafes, you see that we do a lot of things that are not necessarily just about great coffee. I mean, the bakery is an obvious one. That's kind of an accessory to the coffee. But you know that the furniture that we build and the cafe environments that we build, a lot of that is, we recognize its importance to the business, but it's also because we just like to try to do something really, really well. And that's whether it's coffee sourcing or baked goods, or we manufacture our own outdoor furniture, or the cafe environments, or the way we employ and the culture that we've built. We're just driven to do it really, really well. And the speakers were great, by the way. We didn't know how to sell them. But anyway, that's kind of why.
Yeah. So, I go to your cafes a lot, and it seems like they're kind of this ideal third place. They're not home, they're not work. They're this place where people are, people are studying, people are working, but people are hanging out. You see like, groups of what appear to be old friends, neighborhood meetups. Was it part of your original desire or goal to create environments for that kind of thing, that kind of connection?
We're really turned on by work and craft and artisanship, and I think for those of you that have come to Prospect when it was the kind of the dance of commerce that was going on there, I mean, that was wild. There was so much stuff going on there. But our Humboldt facility and our Bayview facility, it's all about work and allowing people to participate in the work that we do. But I think by extension, that's also about the work that our customers are doing when they're in the cafes, and whether that's work or whether that's social work or just connecting with each other. We've always felt like, and I think it's true, these cafes serve as kind of these connection points in the community, and it is a great third place. What really turns us on, I think, is when we get the kind of mixture of people, and my offices are at Humboldt, so I see that cafe and our clientele there frequently. And what's super cool is we get everything in there. We get it's from politicians and business people to North Shore moms to local artists, residents of the neighborhood, kids in strollers, school kids after school. It's this beautiful mixture of people, and that's when the cafes are doing what they do well. That's what you see.
When that is definitely what I see when I'm in the cafes, but it almost feels like it was, I don't know, it's hard for me to imagine the decisions that went into creating that environment, because I don't design spaces. So like, can you tell us a bit about like, how do you create that environment? I mean, it's not as simple as build it and they will come, or is it? I mean, maybe there was just some great unmet demand for third places.
No, I think there are other coffee businesses, obviously in Milwaukee and obviously in the world. In many of those places, I think it's pretty clear when you walk in, it's not exactly, it's not an invitation for you to sit down and spend a bunch of time. It's, the counters are very thin. They may not have much seating. If they do have seating, it's hard. They really want a transactional approach. They want you to come in and buy your product and get out. And that's never been our view of kind of what our places want to be, and that's why they are built the way they are. We want people to feel welcome. We don't want you to feel like you have to have the secret password, that you have to be an expert in single origin coffees and an accomplished taster to participate in what we do. We want everybody to feel like they can come in and find a place that is comfortable for them. So
there are a lot of cafes that feel like they're sort of a shrine to fancy coffee.
Oh yeah. And that's we call that precious.
Yeah.
And we don't like precious. We're really internally we call ourselves socialist capitalists because we definitely love running a great business, and we love generating cash and having the power of that to drive your business forward. But my partner Paul, I mean, there are others that are socialists in the organization, but it's their approach to how we want the cafes to perform is it definitely is about community and about everybody.
Yeah. So I mean, on that count, and creating these community spaces, have you been successful?
Yes, I think by and large we have. I think there are challenges. There are, as you guys know, the cafes, they're comfortable. We welcome you, and sometimes we welcome the same person for 4 or 5 hours on end.
Yeah.
And so sometimes there are challenges that way. We need to find places for the new people that are coming in the door to sit down. But in the grand scheme of things, that's a good problem to have. We're not complaining about that, but I think we just want the cafes to be a welcoming, connective spot, connective tissue for the community.
Yeah. I wonder about things like, you have great Wi-Fi, you have places to plug in a computer or whatever, and obviously people study there and people work at your cafes. How do you balance like that versus sort of more, I guess, what I would think of as more true and pure human to human connection, because you don't want to have a room of people just sort of being alone together, right? They're physically in the same space, but they're not actually together.
Yeah,
right?
there's a lot of that goes
Yeah.
on, though. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm guilty myself. I'll go downstairs at Humboldt and order my lunch and sit down at the bar, and the first thing that's in my hand is my phone, and I'm scrolling across various news feeds.
Well, there's not necessarily anything wrong with that,
Yeah.
but if everybody's doing it, then
Yeah, we sponsor a lot of events that occur in our cafes, and
Yeah.
those drive a level of
Yeah.
interaction. And if anybody's been to the back room at Prospect, that's a really fabulous, engaged place for music, and it's a really intimate venue where I think you get a musical experience, which is very different from a large scale environment.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of that. I mean, we turn the Wi-Fi off, much to people's chagrin, in certain cafes on certain days, because we're like, we don't need that going on. We got other stuff to do here.
Yeah.
And that's the outgrowth of that is people, they don't have that ability to just check out.
Yeah.
So it's actually pretty interesting when we do that.
Do you see people who are at a cafe, maybe doing something alone, working, whatever, who then sort of stay when the cafe turns into, offline, performance mode or whatever? Do people sort of go through that transition with you, or is it a different crowd that sort of swaps out?
I think it's mostly a different
Yeah.
crowd. I think at Prospect, if the people are in the cafe and like they're going into a sound check into the back room, people kind of freak out. And we haven't quite figured out how to kind of manage that transition quite right yet.
Yeah.
But I think it's a different crowd.
Yeah. Yeah. As somebody who thinks a lot about how, environments and how sort of different features encourage people to interact or to be together, if you had a magic wand and you could create kind of the perfect space for connection and belonging, what would that look like? Or maybe you already made it. I don't know.
We got pretty
Yeah,
close.
yeah.
We had an opportunity at 68th and Wells in Wauwatosa, and we took down a building and had it's less than an acre, but anyway, we got to build a cafe.
Oh, cool.
So it's this purpose-built
Yeah.
building, and it has a lot of the things that we want. It has a number of separate spaces. It has one of the rooms is loaded with garage doors, and in the nice weather, all of them are up. So that room is all protected from the elements. It's like being outdoors but still being indoors.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of move more outdoors, and you're under a kind of a canopy covering where the fire pit is. And then if you move all the way outdoors, it's this kind of gradation of seating from indoors to outdoors, and from busy spaces and service spaces into private, cozy spaces, and that's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, I haven't been there, but based on your description, I want to check it out.
We're very proud of that cafe.
Yeah, I can tell. So when I think I was doing some reading, some of the interviews that you've done and things like that, and I came across a line from you that I thought was really, really interesting. And you said, and it was in the context of a long thing, and you said, we, meaning the Colectivo cafes, I think, or maybe the company more broadly, you can tell me, but you said, we are knitted into the community. And I was wondering if you could talk about what you meant by that, and how like, what are the specific things that you've done to knit yourself in?
Well, part of it is self-evident. I mean, the cafes are this connection point, so they operate very locally. These cafes typically do, and so some of it is just being what we are, which is this connection point. But there's internal stuff that we've done as well that has been very intentional, and we actually, in business parlance, there are profit centers and then there are cost centers. Profit centers obviously generate revenue. Cost centers are just sucking up revenue. You're just pouring money down a hole. And hopefully that money you're pouring down that hole is going to somehow support the profit centers. But there's a cost center that's optional for us. And we employ a person whose job is pretty much solely to engage with the community, with all of the nonprofit groups that we connect with.
Yeah.
So there's a very intentional, it's a cost to the company. It's something we believe deeply in. And all that person's job is only to reach out and connect with all of the groups in our communities.
Yeah.
So when we say knit it into our communities,
Yeah.
let me tell you I'll try to keep it very short story. We hosted at Humboldt when that building was complete. Our general contractor, Dahlman Construction, was about to celebrate their 100th anniversary, which is pretty cool. And they said, could we close the cafe and could you host us for our 100th anniversary? We were like, absolutely, totally, go for it. So we closed the cafe, and all these, of course, subcontractors and architects and designers and engineers and all these people are coming. And credit to him, the architect that we fired for the Humboldt project, we did not use him, showed up into a building that he got fired off the design program. Just a really good ego, this guy. and he sat down and he was engaging with us and appreciating the building. We gave him a tour and he was very complimentary. And Bill Robeson, who works at Engberg Anderson, said that one of the things I really like about you guys is whenever I'm out in the community, the things I go to, the events that I want to participate in, you're there too. So the things that I find important, me personally, Bill, you guys are also finding important and are out there supporting. And so that is the outgrowth of Ramey, our community relations person, just constantly pushing out there and trying to figure out how can we engage in this event and that event and this thing and that thing. And those are very intentional moves on our part.
Yeah, that's cool. So you are a tech enthusiast. I'll start with a very broad question, which is how does technology fit into all the stuff that we're talking about?
Well, there's enthusiasm for social media and connection, and then there's what I actually like, which is like hardware and automating things.
Sure.
I am a tech enthusiast, but I don't make the mistake of thinking that I'm enthusiastic about software and Facebook.
Yeah.
That's not the program.
Let the record reflect. I guess one thing that when we were preparing for this, we were trading a few emails, and you said that you are a news junkie, so you read a lot of news, so you're sort of interacting with certain types of highly connected, distributed software systems, but you also said that you don't personally use any social media. Is that a deliberate philosophy that you have, or something else?
I kind of just broadly object to the whole Facebook thing. It rubs me the wrong way. So I know it serves great utility for certain people. I just avoid it like the plague. It's not totally true I don't engage in social media. The company's on Instagram, so I need to see what's going on there. And then, of course, I get to populate with a few interesting accounts like Hall of Meat. That's a good one. That's Grizzly skateboard videos. Or Jerry of the Day. That's a popular one. Subway Creatures, I can recommend. Also good. So there's some good stuff there. A little bit of entertainment during the day. But I think the fundamental is I am a little bit of a news junkie. I was disappointed, actually. Our paper delivery person had become so unreliable that our 7-day-a-week New York Times subscription, I called him up, and because the paper was like arriving at 8:30 or so in the morning, and we're like, we're gone. And by the time I come home in the evening, I've already read all the news. So so we had to cancel the daily delivery. Yeah. But it's, I try to spread my consumption. I like news aggregators like Google News and Flipboard and a couple of other programs that I can. So I'm not just channeled into. It's probably no secret here. I'm on the left end of the spectrum, but I don't want to channel myself into purely left-leaning. I've become very sensitive to and it's not necessarily slanting the news, but I've become very sensitive to particular news channels and the story selection. Yeah. It's not necessarily the reporting. Right. It's just the question of what stories are they choosing to put on the page, and it definitely leans you one way and the other. Yeah. So working through a whole lot of news sources, whether that's like Gizmodo on the, or Engadget or some of the techie stuff, or whether it's the Times or Washington Post or Politico or, there's a whole litany of things, but I want to make sure my news consumption is reasonably balanced.
Yeah.
So that I'm not just taking somebody's party line.
Yeah. Can you say more about your opposition to Facebook? I'm very a lot of people don't like Facebook, and a lot of people wish they used it less, but few people are as strident in their opposition to it. I forget the exact words, but it was something like, I'm fundamentally opposed to it. And so I'm just curious to hear more about that.
I think Facebook is emblematic of what technology can do to people in terms of consuming their time. And also, I think one of the reasons I've really become it's become so objectionable to me is the 2016 election and the very poor control and management of the news that people were consuming. I think it's really fundamentally, I talk to my brother and my partner Paul about this all the time, that if you are not careful about the news you're consuming, you cannot act as an informed citizen. And I think it is actually somewhat fundamentally threatening to our democracy that if people are consuming news that is being manipulated to the degree that it can be in social media feeds, I have concerns about kind of the long-term viability of the republic.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned,
not to be too dramatic.
right. Well, you mentioned the differences in story selection, and it's sometimes it feels like if you look at a different newspaper or you flip on a different news channel or different website, it's like they're reporting on a different world, and
Totally.
Facebook takes that to an extreme degree where it's what their software believes the version of the world is that you want to see.
Yeah, well, when I get out of here tonight, I got to go strap on my AR-15 and get to that pizza parlor where the pedophiles are in the basement,
right.
And Hillary Clinton. And I mean, but it is, we all laugh and it is funny, but it is, dude actually did that.
Right.
People are actually believing this stuff. So that is terribly distressing to me.
Yeah. And so did you kind of experience some of that, I don't know, that angst or that discomfort yourself, or did you choose to avoid Facebook entirely from the beginning?
No, I've never really participated.
Yeah.
So it's just never made a whole lot of sense to me.
Do you feel like, does Instagram push those same buttons for you, or is that different? I
don't spend that much time on it. I occasionally, I enjoy the skateboard videos and stuff.
Yeah.
But, it's not like I'm chewing up a whole bunch of time there. I don't invest enough time to actually figure out what feeds that I should be dialed into, that then I could actually burn up 2 or 3 hours a day scrolling through Instagram. That's not what I'm doing.
Right. Well, and that's one of the big differences in the model of those two different platforms. Facebook is sort of, even if you never follow anything, it's going to show you stuff. Instagram is based on the idea that you opt in to what you're interested in, and so it sounds like you've used that model to create a version of that particular app, which does cause problems for some people, but for you, it's just a source of joy.
Yeah, I think it's Instagram is just a much more civilized piece of software.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Well, maybe you're not looking in the right corners, or the wrong corners.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah. Does anybody have any questions for Lincoln? Yeah, over here. I'm gonna pause you, and I'm gonna say it into the microphone so it gets on the recording. So the first part of the question was whether you have a persona in mind when you're designing one of your cafes, and the second part of the question was if can you share what, at a very zoomed in level, what was that experience of creating for the first time that first cafe and, having people come and hang out there?
Well, for the first part question, the answer is no. I think that I don't want to, what I said before about wanting you don't need the secret password to get in the cafes. We want you to feel welcomed in the cafes, and when the cafes are working their best, They have all kinds of different people in them. That is really what we're trying to accomplish. So we're not catering to millennials, and we're not catering to the over 60 set. That's not how we calculate that stuff. I credit a good liberal arts education for being able to transition from loudspeaker manufacturing to coffee roasting. Being able to address a problem and analytically work through the process of how do I solve this is really what that's all about. Sure, we screwed things up. The first cafe, a lot of people think it was Prospect. It was actually the Bayshore Cafe, which has now been rebuilt 3 times. But that was so poorly executed that the freezer where the smoothies were kept, I had not really laid out the counter right, and the door would only open about 30% of the way because it ran into something else. And the dishwasher we got, we were assured it was a pump-out dishwasher, but it was actually a gravity drain dishwasher, and that caused all kinds of problems with the plumbing. That cafe flooded regularly. It was not, from a physical standpoint, it was not all perfect. And we have, obviously evolved. Even, if you've been with us long enough, you've seen an evolution in the aesthetic in the cafes, and it continues. My partner Paul especially is he's like a nervous cat when it comes to like what the imagery is, what the art is, what the cafes are, he's always innovating and changing. And most companies, they want to create a single logo type and they want to lock that puppy up. And whenever you see our brand, you're going to see it this way. And like Paul's all over the place. We got 37 different logos out there, and he's like, whatever, and people come and want to buy that T-shirt. He's like, no, sorry, gone. We're moving on to the next T-shirt. That's that kind of. It's not just nervous energy, but I think Paul thinks, and I think we all think this, is when you stand still in business, especially in retail, you're going to die. So it is a constant moving forward and innovation process. We talk about it internally as a constant improvement.
Some of the things that you were saying about not having a persona remind me of some of the writing of Seth Godin, who's like a marketing guru, I guess. And he talks about brands and about marketing as being these things that naturally attract people who care about the same stuff. So even if you don't have this really clear sense of, our ideal customer is 42 years old and drives this kind of car and whatever, all that typical persona stuff, there's such a clear brand in everything that you do, which is expressed by the physical environment, but also by the 37 logos and the rotating, T-shirts and so on, that people, I think, they self-identify as being part of whatever that special Colectivo persona is.
Yeah, I agree.
The question was about what's next for Colectivo.
You get the inside track here. We won't do this publicly, but we just had our annual quarterly meeting. That was a joke.
I got it. Thanks.
Thank you. But at the annual quarterly, we decided it was important to kind of readdress that particular issue. What is next? Because now the company is about 650 some odd people. We're in 3 different cities. Communicating has always been a challenge for us. The challenge is only getting worse. So these open quarterly meetings everybody can come and just hear about what's actually going on. So we decided we needed to lay out a vision for the next 5 years. Some may know we are in the midst of constructing a large bakery commissary facility in Chicago, about 18,000 square feet, which is bigger than the Bayview facility. And when you build a bakery commissary that's that big, you got to fill it up real fast. So there is a vision for Chicago that includes a footprint of Colectivos that is at least as big and probably bigger than what we have in Milwaukee. So there are 13 or 14 cafes in the Milwaukee area, so that's clearly going to be at least that many in Chicago, probably more. Chicago has a bevy of neighborhoods and areas that you can locate, so we know we're gonna do that. We're going to continue to give Milwaukee some love. There's some opportunity here where we can expand and grow what we're doing. And Madison the same way. There are only 3 cafes in Madison. Madison, actually, for those that were wondering, I'm sure you were all up late at night wondering about this question, but the Madison thing was really an experiment to figure out Chicago. We had to understand how many cafes we needed in a place to be viable, what it was like to translate our culture from one city to another, what was it going to take to do the logistics of supplying that cafe. Coffee is relatively easy. We deliver it once a week. Bakery is trouble. It's not only every day, but it's also overnight. So when all of us, and fortunately I'm not driving that truck, but when we're sleeping at night, there are vehicles that are departing from the Bayview facility full of baked goods and coffee and going to all of the cafes that we service. So driving to Madison, driving to Chicago, making drops, from about midnight all the way to about 4 in the morning. So Madison was that experiment to figure out how we were going to support Chicago effectively. Not that we don't love Madison; it's fabulous. We love our cafes there, but that's how that worked.
Another thing that you have going on, and I don't know how personal this is versus professional, is you're involved in a co-working space called Work Lofts, which is on the east side. Is there another location, or did I make that up?
It's not quite Work Lofts, but the first kind of co-working space we did was above the Hollander location in Wauwatosa.
Okay.
On I believe that's State Street there, where Harmony dies into the bridge there, and so we had that third floor space which we needed to figure out what to do with.
Yeah.
So we created a working space up there, and we liked it a lot. So we when we purchased the Deco Fuel building on the east side, which is the Tootsie Roll building, some people think of it that way. That was an old bill-paying place for the utilities. We had to figure out what to do with that second floor. So it's now a really nice co-working space that I believe you occupy on occasion.
Yeah, that's true. Is that just a real estate investment, or is that tied into sort of, your purpose and your mission?
This is not a mission-driven project. This is mostly a straight-ahead real estate investment. The way we do it is definitely like us. I mean, if you go up to the co-working space, it's totally fabulous. It's really beautiful. It all has, all custom light fixtures and custom furniture, and we did some really beautiful stuff up there. But the whole real estate thing kind of got going. We invest so heavily in the cafes, it pains us to make those investments in buildings that we don't own. So it's not universally true, but when we can, we want to own the real estate. It not only we're making those investments in our own building, but also it guarantees a certain degree of lease security. So that we can occupy those places for a long, long time. But in the process of doing those, we developed a relationship with our friend Sean Phelan, who you know. Sean is a local developer, Phelan Development, and Sean and the three of us at Colectivo work together on certain real estate transactions.
Yeah. The question was about employee experience. We've talked a lot about customers and community, but how do you take care of employees? How do you make sure that turnover is low, that people care about the company and want to stay for a long time?
Very good questions, especially right now. Employment is at a very high level. The pickings are relatively slim. Wage pressure is constantly being pushed up. So these are salient and present questions. We've always thought very hard about our role as employers. We always wanted to be, and Paul really championed this early on. He wanted to, there were things that you could mess with, but you can't mess with the paychecks. People need to be paid on time, every time. We were very early to develop internal health insurance. There are a number of companies out there that just don't do that anymore. So we've fund aggressively employer match into the 401k that we run. Those are some of the basic, blocking and tackling. But there's also, and we see this a lot, especially with our younger participants in our workforce, is that they really, while they want to get paid, of course, and they want to have health insurance and they want to save for retirement, they want to learn. And so our training department, we have a department that is staffed with people that train up, mostly in the coffee world. But then there are things we call lightning rods, and these are coffee experts in each of the cafes. So there are opportunities to become very, very educated in terms of coffee. There's also the food ambassadors that we have who are similar to the lightning rods in that they're foodies, and they want to get educated on food. So there are a variety of initiatives we have to give people that training and to give them more skills. I think we're not perfect though, but far and away not perfect. We know we need to improve things, so we need a better program to develop our managerial talent. And better capacity to develop higher level, senior level people, skills of managing people, skills of tactically attacking initiatives, taking responsibility. These are things that's right now in the conversation.
Cool. We're just about out of time, so I want to ask you one more question, which is about Milwaukee. You've lived almost your entire life in Milwaukee. It's interesting to think about you and hear about you expanding into other cities because, to me, Colectivo is so connected to Milwaukee. And I'm curious, are there things about this place, this city, whether it's cultural things or elements of the physical environment or social structures that make Milwaukee a good place or a bad place to do some of the things that we've been talking about, to feel like you can connect to other people, feel like you're a part of a community, feel like you belong? Where does Milwaukee sort of stack up on that stuff?
That's a good one. I think it stacks really well in that this is a city where you can get connected quickly to whether that's people or professionals or government, and in our case, government is critical. All of the from the building permits to the health department to all of the pieces of city government that we need to interface with. Let me tell you, working in Chicago is a totally different program.
Yeah.
And so I've always sung the praises, although we get frustrated sometimes. But Milwaukee is an accessible city from that perspective. It also has such a great history and culture of artisanship. I think the craft of what we do is very easily connected into people's heads. I think they understand it at a somewhat granular kind of fundamental level. So I think working here has been great, and it's a city where I think you can get noticed fairly quickly if you do great work. And I think other cities, if you're working in some of the coastal cities or even in Chicago, getting noticed is like half the battle.
Yeah.
So I think this was a great place for us to develop as a young company. And now we're fortunate to have enough scale that we can take this to other places.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot, Lincoln. Really appreciate your time. And thanks to all of you for being here.
Thank you.